Hi, I'm Louise Larson. I run August Consulting, a college consulting practice helping families on the road to college sort out what they need to do to get their student prepared to submit applications. And I am doing my monthly webinar, and I wanted to announce how I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently. Last month in December, I did a presentation that I didn't do live, that I just put together because December is a busy month and I didn't want to lock it families into a specific time to tune in. And I did it, and it was so nice and flexible, and I didn't have to lock myself into a certain time to be there, and families didn't have to be there at a specific time. And a lot of people in the past months have asked me for a recording, and I've been putting them on YouTube. So in December, I did one virtually, and I meant to do it on Monday, but I didn't get to it. And Tuesday I got it done and got it uploaded. And I said, this is so much more flexible for me and for families to not be locked into a specific time. So what I'm going to be doing moving forward is just doing a recording at the beginning of the month and sending it out and putting it up on my YouTube channel, which is August Consulting. You can also check my Facebook page. I have two. I have an August Consulting one and a Two River College admissions page, as well as an August Consulting on Instagram, where I put everything that I talk about on there, especially the articles. Anything that I mention here should be on my Facebook page. So today I'm going to talk about news and notes and then go into paying for it, which seems like a very timely thing to go into since the FAFSA just rolled out. So the two biggest things, and I'm recording this on January 6th. So the two biggest things in the news of late have been the resignation of the Harvard president, and the FAFSA has been in the news a lot because, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. The Harvard president resigning got so much news. I mean, the day after she resigned, the New York Times had 4 different articles. And if you're here and you have a high school child and you're trying to figure out college admissions and how do I start to sort this out, the president of Harvard has no bearing on what you're trying to do. So, maybe you're interested in, you're following that news, great. But I'm just telling you that who is the president of Harvard does not impact how you guide your child through this. The FAFSA did actually happen. I have been saying since July, my Monopoly money was on that they would have to push this back to next year. But they got it out, and I think there have been some glitches, but the FAFSA is operational. So if you have a senior, you need to take your 2022 taxes and do that. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later after I get through kind of the news and notes. I will share with you that the week before Christmas, my second child finished up their college career, and they have been applying to law school, and the law school application process has been such a revelation for me. It has been really a great experience for me to be on the side of the table where I have no information. I'm really stressed. I don't understand. I don't know. We couldn't even find the law school application. And I always admonish parents, we are not taking the SAT. We are not applying. There is no we in college admissions. It is your student. And I was saying we all the time. I was like, well, we have said, like, and I was like, there's no we, like, I'm not applying to law school. So it was a really good experience for me to kind of be on the other side of the table and know how stressful that is. And when I would reach out to the consultant that I was working with, I'd be like, oh, thank you, you have the answers. And so it was just a good experience for me, and makes me even more committed to trying helping families, because I really feel like in 2024, we just turned into 2024, it is as chaotic and stressful as ever. So to just share some good news, my law school applicant got a couple of yeses so far. So, I felt like we were sending letters out to Santa. I had no idea if this was going to come into any sort of viable thing. So anyway, I just wanted to, I've been talking about that the past couple months and share that. Okay. So what has been going on in college admissions? Let's start with testing. The if you have a junior, they are going to be the first group to take the new online SAT. And what does this mean? I mean, I think juniors need to test. Now, everybody went test optional during the pandemic, and I was on a NACAC webinar, the um, professional group I'm in, and they said, 80 right now, 83% of colleges are test optional, 3.7% are test blind. That means like they will not see scores anywhere. To give you some perspective, like the University of California system is test blind. 8% of colleges require SATs. The Florida publics all require it. So to give you a sense of a perspective on that, in 2018, 105% of students, I don't know how they got 105, but 105% of students submitted test scores. In 2021, only 56% submitted test scores. I think juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, I think more schools are going to be kind of seeing which way the online SAT goes, and I think more and more schools will probably start to require some test scores. Not everybody, but some will. In that test score world, hang on, I had more notes on testing. There's really 4 different ways to think about testing. There's test required, there's test blind, and then there's test optional and test preferred. Some schools will let you not submit test scores, but you better have a good reason why you're not submitting test scores. It can't just, it might have to be like I live in a remote village in Alaska, that type of thing. So those are the 4 different categories. Bowdoin College, I just want to give them a little shout out. Bowdoin College was the very first school to ever go test optional, and I think they did it in 1969. So they have been test optional for a long time. And if you really want to have a sense of if a school is test optional, that is going to be maybe somebody who was test optional before the pandemic, or a school that has gone permanently test optional since the pandemic. Anybody else might be looking at test scores. University of Virginia changed they got 42,903 42,093 early action and early decision applications. They are up 3.4%. They broke records. They have come up with a new decision plan. They are not going to defer anybody. They are either going to admit, deny, or waitlist. I thought that was an interesting move on their part. What else do I have here? This is going to lead into the FAFSA a little bit, and the talk about how to pay for college. The FAFSA, that the way families are evaluated to pay for college often misses some nuance. And many families, after they fill out this paperwork, are given an amount of money. This is what your expected family contribution, or the old EFC is now going to be called the SAI, the Student Aid Index. Families that aren't any sort of business, this is often in a liquid business. This is often a situation where leverage is going to be more complex, where any sort of debt market or debt that you take on is strictly geared to reinvestment and not personal expenses. There can be partnerships, multiple owners that don't allow a business to readily be available to generate money for college, but the FAFSA and the CSS profile might look at it as available, and it really isn't. The other thing that has come up a lot, you hear a lot about direct admit plans, and direct admit plans, they're not terrible. It's where maybe you have you do the Common App and schools actually see your profile and they just admit you. Now, these are not typically going to be the most selective schools. You're not going to get a random direct acceptance from Vanderbilt. But they are good because many students that live in rural areas, in communities that don't have a strong going college population, sometimes those students are intimidated to apply, or they have a feeling like an imposter syndrome. And if they just have a couple colleges say, hey, we really like your profile, we'd love to have you come be a student, it can be really validating and might bring in a student that didn't think they were college material. Scholarships were often included. So, you might hear there's been a lot in the news about direct admits. It's not a bad thing. And it could, I mean, look, it would be amazing if that was the wave of the future, almost like the way medical students match for residency. Um, the other thing that was in the news a lot was colleges using incomplete applications in their numbers. So if they say we had 10,000 applicants, and then you find out, 1,200 of them were not complete applications, but the colleges counted them. Why did they count them? To have a lower admit rate. So when colleges put out data on the government, um, on the iPad platform, sometimes the numbers were different than what they were putting out in other arenas. So um, you always have to kind of look at those numbers, and sometimes they're really accurate and sometimes they're just not. 4% rise in college costs in 2023. And the other news in the application world was Cornell has decided to take less of their class early decision, which is good. Harvard early action applications are down 17%. And the Common App, as of December 14th, had over 1 million applicants send out 4,576,919 applications. That volume application is up 12%, and applications to public schools are up 14%. Now, those numbers are just in December, so it will be interesting to see by the end of February, does the increase continue, or did maybe the regular decision round go down a little bit because people sent in so many early applications? In that same vein, early decision, there was a webinar I was on, and they said, early decision really limits middle and upper middle class students. They cannot commit, they don't qualify for need-based aid. They cannot commit to what might be a $90,000 a year ticket in the next year or two, and those families gravitate to out-of-state public schools. So what else? Anything else here? I got the Common App information. Okay. I did oh, okay. Here you go. Yale. Yale reduced their early acceptances from 776 to 709 because they over-yielded last year. So anytime a school over-yields, when they get more students saying yes than they anticipated, that the next couple of years they're going to be doing things a little bit differently. The other thing is, there was an article in the New Yorker said, how rich do you have to be to get into the Ivy League? And I talked about this, the Opportunity Insight study that came out in July 23 by Raj Chetty and forget who his partner is, but whenever I hear the word Raj Chetty, I'm like, I better sit up and listen. The lowest chances of admission are for the children in the top 5%, 5 to 10% of earners who earn between $158,000 and $222,400. That range, that 5 to 10% range, they have the lowest chance of admission to a highly selective university. They fare worse than both kids who are much richer than them and kids that are much poorer than them, that have comparable scores and grades. The worst of that is the segment between 222,000 and 251,000. The 1%ers take up a disproportionate share of seats. They applied higher rates. They have legacy advantage. They're 5 more times to be admitted. They're 5 times more likely to be admitted as legacies. They often are athletes. And the reality is, to be a high-level collegiate athlete takes a tremendous amount of financial and physical support through high school. And they might bring some non-academic qualities to it. So the 1%ers are taking up a disproportionate share of seats. 1%, I believe 1% is categorized as somebody who makes a household with more than $611,000 in income a year. All right. So I think what I'm going to do now is go into paying for college. And um, how does this work? And I'm going to try and give you an overview that is simple and straightforward for something that is not simple and straightforward. And what I would invite you to do, I'm going to try to be as give you an overview of this. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me and for clarification. Um, okay, so every college tallies up on their page. And if you go to any college page and just type in the search bar, cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is devised of several things. It is tuition, fees, room, board, transportation, and personal expenses. So I guess it's 6 things. And when you look at those numbers, I would suggest that you just look at room, board, and tuition, because that will allow you to compare apples to apples. And the reason I say that is because personal expenses and travel expenses, the colleges can put in any number they want. So if you live in Florida and your child is going to school in California and the travel expenses are billed at $500, you know it's not going to cost $500. If you live in New York City and your child is going to UConn, it probably is going to cost you $500 to get them to UConn. So the personal expenses and the travel expenses are discretionary numbers picked out by each university. So when you really compare costs, my suggestion is you do room, board, tuition to compare schools, because their cost of attendance has some discretionary numbers in there. So that's the first thing, is just look at room, board, and tuition. When they evaluate your ability to pay, everybody has to fill out the FAFSA, the Federal Application for Free Student Aid. And this will evaluate your ability to pay using income, savings, and investments outside of retirement accounts, any kind of qualified account. It will also look at the students' assets and earning. I've seen families get lopsided here or upended or kind of really shocked when they might own some part of either a family business or some sort of second home that great aunt so-and-so's lake house and you own a share of it and it's actually worth a chunk of money. You don't really have access to that money, but that is not part of your home and it is counted as available to pay for college. Same thing for students. If your parents or grandparent left them a lump sum of money, that is seen as available. So that is um, the federal plan. Everybody requires it. And if you want your child to have the option to take out student loans on the federal student loans, you have to fill that out. Some parents say to me, I know I won't qualify for aid, so why am I doing that? I'll talk about that in a minute. So every school requires that. There is a secondary evaluative measure that many private colleges use and that a handful of public schools use, some of the more selective ones. That is called the College Scholarship Service Profile, often abbreviated as the CSS profile, often just called the profile. This is a proprietary platform from the good old College Board, and this will evaluate your ability to pay. There's some 300 some odd questions that the College Board provides, and the colleges themselves get to pick which questions they can ask you, which questions they want to ask you to get a deeper snapshot of your finances. They can ask you questions like, has anybody paid any bills for you this year? So if somebody paid some money for maybe kids to go to camp in the summer, that goes into the pile. So the College Scholarship Service Profile can take very middle-class families and suddenly make them look like they can pay a lot of money. It takes the difference that it takes into account differently than the FAFSA it will often take home equity into account. It will ask you what you have in retirement savings. Now, I was at Princeton one time and I said, "Why do you ask if you're not taking retirement savings into account, why do you ask what you have for save for retirement?" And, I like the answer. They said, "Well, if parents are older and they have $1 million in savings and nothing in a retirement account, we know that maybe they're older and they see this $1 million as their savings, or maybe they own a property, or, and I was like, okay, fair enough. So most families find that, if you're employed, if you're a two-income household and you own a home and you are filling out the profile, you might really find yourself with a very high EFC that you really can't pay realistically over 4 years, and certainly not for maybe over 6, 8, or 10 for multiple children. Um, so so that is the 2 ways that you will be asked to share your financial information. So when you do that, the next thing you need to figure out from colleges is, um, how much of your need do they meet? And you can go on to their websites, you can go into the common data set and find out. I think even the College Board might have this on the Big Future, where you can see, okay, so on the FAFSA, I generate some need, and my kid is looking at these schools and they're only FAFSA, they don't require the profile. Most There are almost no FAFSA only schools that meet 100% of need. Most FAFSA schools will not meet 100% of need. The For the most part, the only schools that will meet 100% of need are profile schools. And again, because they count home equity and they ask more detailed questions, it is very hard to generate need on the profile. Occasionally, I have a family come through and they don't the people that might fare well in this are families who maybe they have an LLC, and they have an LLC and they don't generate a lot of income on their tax return. Um, Families who have a lot of home equity in the profile can really find themselves um, in for a surprise. Um, so when you do this, it is critical, and you can go to the College Board Big Future will allow you to put in your numbers and get a sense of what colleges see you available to, and we see your ability to pay. Um, the big change in the FAFSA, and there's been so much talk about the FAFSA, the big change, if you're here and you are trying to figure out college, there's a couple changes in the FAFSA, and there's a lot of changes in the FAFSA, but the places that it might impact you are this. It used to be that if whatever your expected family contribution was, if your expected family contribution was $50,000 a year and you had one child in college, once you had two, they took the $50,000 and divided by two. So you were expected to come up with $25,000 for each child. And then the schools would build your financial aid plan based on you paying 25,000 on the financial aid plan, building off the 25,000. So if the school was 65,000, they had $40,000 worth of need that they would fill in for you in different ways. Lamar Alexander, I don't know why, but he was adamant that that not be the case anymore with the new FAFSA. So for families with more than one child in college, they're losing that. So if your new SAI is $50,000, they expect you to come up with $50,000 for each student. How? I don't know. The other big change is if you are a high need family, they've really simplified it for high need families. And so if you find yourself, if you're a single parent or you know a high need family, it will actually be simplified for them. And Stephanie Land wrote this book called Class. She was a single mother going to University of Montana, cleaning houses as she went with a young child. And she talks about the exhaustion of having to prove how poor you are, and this the chronic need to prove how poor you are. So the FAFSA did do a good job for high need families of really simplifying it. So we'll see how it goes. It normally opens October 1st. This year they didn't get it out till just January 1st. I would imagine next year it will be available October 1st again. All right, so when you fill this, when you figure this out and you apply for financial aid, schools are going to meet your need in a variety of ways. One will be the federal loan. You can borrow $5,500 as a freshman and a sophomore, and $7,500 as a junior and a senior. If you qualify for a subsidized loan, it will not accrue interest as your child is in school. If it is not subsidized, the loan will accrue interest as it goes. Schools can offer grant money. They can offer work study. So any financial aid package will probably include some work study, a job on campus, making $2,000 to $3,000 a year. That will be part of the financial aid package. They can add a Parent Plus loan, which means the parents are borrowing money for college. Grant money, that is how, and then if it's a FAFSA only school or potentially a profile school, they can also put in a gap. And a gap is where, if your student aid index is 50,000 and the school's 90,000, and they meet your need up to say 70, 75,000, and they're leaving the rest on you. So a lot of people think, okay, I don't qualify for need-based aid, so how am I going to do this? And that is seeking out merit aid. And so a lot of schools will leverage their institutional funds to add a scholarship to your child's acceptance. And the reality of scholarships is the most meaningful money you will ever get is from the school themselves. Running around and people say to me, where can I apply for scholarships? I've never seen anybody get any sort of meaningful money from any scholarships. There are, a Rotary scholarship, maybe $2,000 once. And hey, that's great. I'm not saying that isn't great, but those tend to be a one-shot deal. And then you're, not getting it the next year. So the most meaningful money you will get is from the colleges themselves. So when you go to say, okay, where might a school offer a meaningful amount of money? A litmus test is that if a school meets 100% of 100% of the demonstrated need of 100% of the students with need, almost guaranteed they're not giving merit scholarships. So a lot of times families will say, I'm looking for a scholarship. I want my child to apply to, a couple different schools, and they want them to apply to Penn and Princeton. And I say, well, they're not going to get it. They don't give merit scholarships at Penn and Princeton. It's only need-based aid. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, no, you'll be full pay at that school. I had a family call me. They had a very talented athlete that was, had all sorts of offers from all the NESCAC schools. And Williams, Amherst, Tufts, and these schools, that's the type of school. It's 100% of need of 100% of the students that apply. And the family had 4 kids, and they said, we cannot start paying $90,000 a year for college for the first. We cannot sustain it. We know we got to figure something else. What do we do? And I said, there's no choice. Like, you either pay or you don't go to those schools. So here's the thing that you need to know about the FAFSA. If you have a student, and you are, you pretty sure you don't qualify for need-based aid, and you're trying to figure out, is it worth it for me to fill out the FAFSA? Here is why I encourage families of first-year students to fill out the FAFSA. Some states require it. Some states, it's a graduation requirement. Not in the Northeast that I know of, but there's some schools in the Southeast that require it. The FAFSA can unleash, release some state aid for different students. Some schools require it for merit money. And if you anticipate having your student take out a student loan, a federal Stafford loan, you have to do the FAFSA. It is worth it to have it filed. You don't have to, if they give you, whatever they offer you, student aid, around work study or loans, whatever, you don't have to take them. But if there was any change in your status, if you lost a position, a job, illness struck, there was some sort of crisis for your family, you would have it filed and go back to the schools and say, could you reconsider me? It's filed. And the last reason is there are a handful of schools that if you do not apply as a freshman, you can never apply sophomore, junior, or senior year. So, if you have all the money for college sitting in an account and you're just good to go, maybe not. But there's a lot of reasons to do the FAFSA as a freshman. So, that is what I've got. I will leave you with this, that I had a parent say to me one time, um, my I am a tech person. I understand technology. This is the worst platform I've ever had to, eh, you know, deal with. And I feel like this is a punishment for not earning more money so that I didn't have to do this. I feel like you failed to save enough money for college and now you have to do this. So, um, as a parent who just finished paying for child number 2, I understand the struggle is real. Paying for college is no joke. If you have a ninth, 10th, or 11th grader and you're looking at, potentially paying full freight at private schools, that number might have a 9 in front of it. So, there's a lot to this. I hope that was simple and clear enough. Um, Happy to answer any questions people have. Feel free to reach out. And thank you so much.